Spiritual Psychics TV is hosting the first annual recognition of achievements, acknowledging those who dedicate their lives to a spiritual act of kindness. Spiritual Psychics TV, bringing spiritual people together.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychic TV and this Being Spiritual with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. It's Friday night. It's our fortnightly show and we're going to be chatting spiritualist and spiritual philosophy this evening. Wonderful to be with you. If you are a first-time viewer to this show or this channel, give us a special hello. Let us know where you're watching the show from tonight and I'll give you a special mention in a moment. For those regular viewers that have come back, thank you so much. Richard and I were just discussing that it wouldn't be possible without you because there might not be anybody out there. So it's great to know that you are out there and that you are tuning in. So let us know where you're watching the show from tonight and how you're doing. If you're on Facebook, just participate in the show tonight by commenting on the live stream. Head over to Spiritual Psychic TV on Facebook and then afterwards, why not check out the fan page? Continue to have a chat with the community, the wonderful community that has brought spiritual people together. On YouTube, you need to participate in the live chat. Make sure you've logged in. Give us your comments because this is a live and interactive show. Of course, you can watch this on playback when you're doing the washing up or anything else like that. But tonight, Friday night, the 8th of April, you've got the opportunity to participate. The opportunity to engage, to ask Ash anything spiritual. This evening, we're going to be talking a little bit about incarnation and in particular, babies, children, and conception, because for those that don't know me, tuning in for the first time, and even for those that do, my wife Claire gave birth to baby Robinson number 3 last Thursday morning. I've got a 7.5-day-old baby boy, Oscar Thomas Robinson, that's at home tonight. And part of going through what we've gone through with the birth and everything else, I've been asking spirits some of my own questions about spirit children and children in the spirit world and at what point the soul and the personality fuse with the bodies. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about incarnation, about conception, and we're going to talk a little bit about the spirit world and what it means, as I often believe that it's where we start, it's where we go home to. So I'll be really interested in your thoughts too, folks. For those that were here nice and time and early, you would have seen some adverts there for the SPTV Awards. A fantastic opportunity for you to nominate your favorite SPTV host or your favorite SPTV medium. There are lots of various categories and flavors and healers and physical mediums, best up and coming medium, etc. And I think that we've been really blessed, haven't we, folks, over the last couple of years about all the amazing speakers and demonstrators that have been on SPTV. So why not give service back? Why not think about which personality you want to nominate and then, of course, vote? Because towards the end of the May, all of those votes will be counted up. And for those who have voted, you can be entered into a free prize draw. And all of those votes will be added up and winners will be announced in all of your favorite categories. So do head over to SPTV UK for that and register yourself as a voter and nominate and vote away. Otherwise, folks, it's wonderful to be here this evening and to have a chat with you. So my wife, Claire, says that she's watching from the room next door with Oscar and Noah. Noah just referred to me as a YouTuber. I suppose that's a little bit of what we what we are doing. And he was fascinated to want to watch the show this evening. So hello, Noah and Oscar and Claire. Ethan's probably watching something more interesting like Minecraft. They're more interested than me. Hopefully you're very interested in what we're going to chat about. We'll do a couple of other hellos and welcomes and see who else is out there in the beautiful World Wide Web tonight. Okay. Good evening, Ash and Richard from the lovely Mary Dixie. Alison Barton says good evening to us all. Hiya, Sally Worker. Good evening to you. Claire Colbeck. Hello, Ashley and everyone online. Hope you're all well. Lovely Julie Caswell. Good evening, Julie. Wendy Gawley. Welcome to Baby Oscar. Thank you. Hi, Ashley. Hiya, Wendy. Bless your little one there, special rainbow children. Shamila. And that's a good thing to talk about, rainbow children, Shamila. Do mention that again later on the show. Let's get some other people's thoughts on that. Sheena Lightheart, good evening to you, Sheena. Congrats, Daddy. Cindy Reiner. Hiya, Cindy. Carrie Ann Marshalls, congratulations. Thank you, Carrie Ann. Good evening to you. Leslie Moulton, Reverend Leslie Moulton. Good evening, Leslie. Dad, Daddy Ray Robinson. Good evening, son. Have a great show from Mum and Dad. Living in Mitcham. I mean, I guess you're watching from Mitcham tonight as well. Hannah Chaplin says, good evening, all. Hiya, Hannah. Avril Hayes, good evening. First time watching the show. Welcome, Avril. It's Spiritualist Philosophy tonight. You can ask us any of your questions. Fiona Rosen, good evening. Hope you're all well. Lovely Fiona. Hiya. Diane, good evening. First time watching you. Hiya, Diane. USA Sue. Petty. Hiya, Sue. First time seeing us from West Sussex in England. Sean. Hi, Sean, Diane. Welcome. Love and blessings to everyone from Tony Wright. Hiya, Tony. Good evening, Nicola Humphreys. Mary Lloyd, looking for guidance, please. Love and light. Love and light to you, Mary. Terry Louise, good evening, Ashley. Hi, Richard. Hiya, Terry. Thanks for everything you do. We're not doing guidance as such tonight, folks. Michelle says, good evening, Ashley and everyone. We're chatting philosophy. So no spiritualist mediumship. That's tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Jim, good evening, Jim. We will be talking about questions, so you can ask us questions about spiritual philosophy in general. Someone up early, Sue in Melbourne, Australia. It's just gone 5 o'clock in the morning. Congratulating the birth of Oscar. Thank you, Sue. And thanks for getting up early or staying up late. Great. I think we've caught up with most of the people. Hi, V from New Zealand. So lots of lovely people from all the parts of the world. Chrissy Whitley, good evening to you. And lots of new people as well, which is wonderful, folks. And thank you for continuing to grow this channel. I do hope those on YouTube have subscribed to the channel. You get all your notifications. For those on Facebook and Instagram that pick up on the links, please continue to do what you do. Please share these content, share these shows and these presentations, as the ambition is to bring spiritual people together. That's exactly what we've got tonight. And my own personal mission is to share my knowledge of life after death and the truths of spiritualism. It's a wonderful opportunity that Richard and SPTV have given us to talk about that. And friends, tonight I wanted to talk about incarnation. So not necessarily reincarnation, but I want to talk about the point of incarnation. And I want to talk a little bit about energy and spirit. I want to talk about children who walk on earth and then go home to heaven. Sadly, I want to talk about our spiritual body versus our physical body. And I want to talk a little bit about concept. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do is to share a poem. It's a spirit poem written by my friend Shirley Monaco. And I will give some context to this in a moment. She wrote it for me and my wife, Claire, probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago. I've called the poem Heaven's Gate. And let me just read this to you, folks, very quickly. Okay. I'm in the dark, and in the warm, just waiting for my time to be born. My mummy and daddy waiting for me. I chose them for me to be. Two little brothers patiently wait, for I said goodbye to them at the gate, until it was right for me to join. The time's not long for us to wait, for me to join through the waiting gate. Now, I absolutely love that. And I chose not to share that with Claire actually until the the evening, early hours of the morning before she actually gave birth, and it brought a little tear to her eye because there's a lot of beautiful bits of spiritualist philosophy within this. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Tess. And Shirley, who's often inspired with poetry from spirit, said that it wasn't until she'd finished writing it that it actually suggested or implied something for her, which was that Oscar, who's been brought into this world and into this life for this experience and this incarnation, hiya, Christian Maris, is that Oscar, as some sort of existence, as some sort of intelligence and being, had the opportunity to meet his brothers Ethan and Noah in what we call the spirit world or heaven. And the idea being that they said goodbye to them as they left the spirit world for this world to come and rejoin them. It's always something I've believed, folks. I'm interested to know what your understanding is of this. For those playing the SPTV drinking game, Ralph A. Steadman, I'm going to mention him because Ralph used to inspire a lot of my philosophy. And Ralph used to talk about the fact that it wasn't until a baby had developed inside the mother, up until about the 6-month point of the pregnancy, would the spirit being, the spirit sort of personality and soul, start to fuse with what is now a tiny body in the point of a baby. And I'd asked him questions, failing what the hospital described as failed pregnancies. And again, for those that know that Claire and I tried to have children for about 10 years before we were blessed with Eason. We made that wish, and 3 wishes have now come true. But I always wondered, because we'd got pregnant, we'd got that result on the pregnancy test, whether or not there was a being there, the start of a being. Claire says it was a beautiful poem. I agree with you, Claire. And I'd asked Ralph, and Ralph had said that he didn't think the spirit's personality actually joined until about 6 months. And I'd gone off and I'd spoke to other spiritual people, and indeed I'd asked to spirit. And I got really more of a deeper understanding of that, which I want to share with you. And I invite you to share with me what it is you believe, because what my executive committee of spiritual advisors and philosophers have tried to explain to me is this concept of existence. So for those who've seen me do mediumship, I often talk about the difference between a human being and a corpse is the absence or presence of the personality. It is the personality which animates the corpse to create the human being. And therefore, without that physical shell, that change, that shell, that body goes through that we call death, the personality survives. The personality is what gives us evidence of their life after their life that they've had. So looking at that from a reverse sort of order point of view, at what point does the personality enter the human being to create the human being? Some people would say it's when the baby takes its first breath, when the baby is born. But actually, it got me thinking more and more about this. We had at least 3 miscarriages or failed pregnancies in the run up to Ethan being born. And I believe that actually at the point of conception, so at the point, without going into GCSE sort of science and biology, but the point of the egg being fertilized, those 2 sparks of life, those 2 aspects of intelligently grouped energy, as they collide and they start to merge, there you have the start of incarnation. You have the start of conception. And this all boils down to the fact that we are all made of energy. We're all energy. We're all made of atoms. And within atoms are particles, and particles themselves are intelligent energy. And that the personality, it's my belief, is energy. And after the body, knowing that we can't truly create or destroy energy, the personality energy of the personality that survives. So thinking about that point of conception, you've got, at a very crude level, I suppose, an egg and a sperm, but you've got those 2 different life force energy creating point of conception, you've then got the idea of spirit being, spirit existence coming and being part of that. Now, for me, there's the physical umbilical cord inside mother and the womb, but there is this spiritual umbilical cord, the silver umbilical cord that starts to link the spirit being to what will become the personality of the child. Sorry to cough, folks. And I want to go into a little bit more about that concept and a little bit more about your own understanding. I'm going to talk a little bit about evidence that I've had and what sort of goes along, because we know that the baby has to perform a little miracle every single day as part of that growth and that development over the 9 months. And indeed, as well as the failed pregnancies, my wife has had 3 physical challenging pregnancies and births, preeclampsia and gestational diabetes and a number of other things. And little Oscar, as he was brought into this world, the 3rd induction that we had because of the warning signs and groups of symptoms leading up to eclampsia with Claire, Oscar had done somersaults inside the womb, had wrapped the umbilical cord into a knot and round his neck, and all sorts of different things going on. Now, my dad's just come in there and said there is also another mystical aspect of the spirituality of the incarnation, which is clearly contemplative, affirming that both the world and the spirit are related to the mystery of the creation. Through incarnation, the world summarized the entire universe. Very nice, Dad. You can see where I get some of this stuff from, folks. The fruit never falls too far from the tree. Although we have some brilliant debates, actually, about spiritualism and spiritual inside. Shamila also says we all sign a contract to come back as our souls need to grow at the point of conception. It's, yeah. Very nice, Shamila. So let's go back to that point then. So point of conception got the start of the being. Now, that's going to become the personality of the experience, which will lead to that human experience. Now, we know that our life after that change we call death, that life after life, it's the evidence of the personality of the experience of the human being that's communicating. You know, to give an example of my own family, I'll say, you know, I've got my dad's dad here, Derek Robinson, coming through, giving evidence of X, Y, and Z. This is how he passed. This is how he lived. And this is what he wants to say. That's traditional sort of spiritualist mediumship. He's given me evidence of the experience he's had. At the point of conception and incarnation, he won't have had, if we take my granddad, wouldn't have had any experience as Derek Robinson yet. So what is the personality? And this is where I think that we're still starting to understand in this life, in this experience, is that we are all part of that divine force, that divine spirit, that great architect of the universe. And therefore, there's an element of the universe experiencing things for all of us, but us all being part of that great pool of energy. So at the point of us being conceived, and starting to merge like an umbilical cord, the start of our personality and soul through that energy, I believe it's part of that great spirit, that great energy, and it's the start of that personality. And I want to rewind just a couple of steps before I link back to the Heaven's Gates poem. And Shamila says we all sign a contract. Right? So this is the point I'm going to bring in. I dedicated an entire show to the concept of reincarnation and another one to karma. Now, thinking about the show we did on karma, we spoke about the fact that everything we do in our life, there is a cause and effect. We have personal responsibility and free will for all of our decisions. And if after our life and experience, we review that and we get to the point of saying that, you know what, not everything was positive, there is some negative energy to work off, call that a karmatic debt or a karma debt, then you choose to reincarnate again and maybe work off some of that karma. And this also then introduces the concept of you choosing an element of your incarnation, where you're going to be born, who you're born to, and like Blockbuster Video, we've spoke about it a few times, folks, haven't we? You choose your life. You think, yeah, I'll have that life. And perhaps as we go through many experiences and many incarnations, we get to the point of choosing more difficult lives, not necessarily more interesting and more exciting, but more challenges, or different types of challenges and different types of experiences. And this plays then on the two things that I spoke about. So if we take baby Oscar, who's just been born, and we take Heaven's Gate poem, it suggests at some point an intelligence energy, who now introduces himself as Oscar, or is now known as Oscar, was actually in that place I call heaven. the spirit world, where he'd met his brothers Ethan and Noah, and that actually perhaps as some sort of group of souls to be, we'd all kind of planned this life, and we'd said, right, okay, well, Ashley's going to come down to Earth first, and eventually he'll meet Claire, and that will be Mummy, and then Ashley and Claire will get married, and they will have 10 years worth of challenges, and there'll be a couple of failed pregnancies, and perhaps there is some beings that say, well, we'll be part of that, we'll be part of those failed pregnancies, or perhaps that wasn't part of the destiny. Perhaps the family was always meant to be bigger. Perhaps Ethan, Oscar, and Noah tried before. They tried to come down to Earth for the first 10 years. I don't think that is the case, actually, and I'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute. But there's an idea that we're in Blockbuster Video, and as a group of souls, we're all choosing the life. Let's call it the Ashley Robinson or Ashley and Claire Robinson sort of family experience and umbrella. And as we're choosing that life, there's this idea that everyone then had to say goodbye to me. Okay, bye, being. Let's call him Newman, new human Ashley Robinson. Off he goes. He's gone to Earth. He's gone through that gate. And then Claire, and then Ethan, and then Noah, and then Oscar. And then we're all reunited in this life. And then after our bodies are unable to complete the experience and our body is finished with us, our personality, our soul goes home to heaven. And then we make a place for our friends and loved ones until we're reunited again in heaven. Now, I have a number of bits of proof I just want to present. I'm just going to note that Stephanie has said, I believe they're a soul from the second they're conceived. As a mum, you feel that bond with the baby. Their moments show their likes before being. Absolutely, Stephanie. And I think this is sort of reinforcing what's going through here with me. So some of the points of evidence then I want to give. First, a couple of things I just wanted to suggest is that the so-called failed pregnancies, and I don't really like that term, but I can't think of a better term. It's what the hospital use, but the miscarriages. I've had evidence from independent mediums that at the point of conception, they were children meant to be in our lives, but the biology of the physical 3D world on Earth was not working, and they just wasn't strong enough conditions to complete that fusion and transition. The body was unable to develop any further, and therefore that being went back to spirit. And what they experienced very briefly was that bond, like we were just talking about there a moment ago, the bond with mum. Now, I've had evidence from spirit that those children who would have been continued to evolve in what would have been their human experience and personality in the spirit world. Now, Claire and I had actually came up with sort of, if you like, token names and symbols of what these children meant to us, along the lines of things like hope, faith, charity. We planted sort of rose bushes in celebration of the life that they would have had. And we had independent sort of mediums come and tell us about the time, give us those token words and talk about beings in the spirit world continuing to evolve at what would have been an earthly clock. So that's the first thing I wanted to present. Nicola Humphreys has mentioned that my son always used to say he picked me to be his mummy. He had a choice between me and my friend and decided he wanted to go to me. He wouldn't say anymore because he said it made him sad to talk about. Nicola, thank you for sharing that. And lovely. It goes back to my sort of simple idea that we're in Blockbuster Video type waiting room or design factory in the spirit world, and we're thinking about the lives that are meant to be. Leslie Morton says, I have lots of pictures of close-ups of orbs, and I always think they look like a woman's egg when I've seen pictures of artificial insemination. I will show them to you one day. That would be lovely, Leslie, to see those pictures. That'd be really cool. So it goes back to this second thing then, all right, about destiny and free will. Tina says it's a beautiful way to explain. Thank you, Tina. Hopefully you're all still with me. Second thing was then about destiny. So it's a question I still ask mediums. I still try to unravel the difference between, you know, free will, destination, final destination, the experience we're meant to live. And I do believe that almost everything happens in the way it's meant to happen. I say almost everything because I think that, like a project, the life of Ashley Robinson has a start date and an end date and a number of products or milestones that must be delivered. That, if you like, is my destiny. And when I chose to incarnate as Ashley Robinson and chose my family and parents, perhaps as a soul group, those were the experiences I was looking for. And some of those big things might have been, right, well, I was going to be born to Jackie Robinson at St. Leonard Hospital after a few challenges, and I was going to experience X, Y, and Z, but it would bring me closer, and I'd learn A, B, and C, and I'd do this at school, and I would do that, and I would meet Claire Robinson, and we would try for a family, and that would knock down the next domino to bring in the next part of that. So I do think that big chunks of our life have an element of destiny. The fact that we have no recollection and no memory of any past lives, or indeed this choosing experience, suggests to me that it's less important than our free will. And that actually, whether or not we choose to feel our instinct and intuition, and we listen to our principal guide, and again, folks, we dedicated entire shows to meeting your guides, this idea that the straight and narrow, the pull, the draw, is like an elastic cord, constantly edging and pushing you or pulling you towards your destiny of the project in my life that's Ashley Robinson, with this start date, this finish date, and all these things that must happen in between. If I choose to ignore that intuition, that instinct, if I choose to defy it, then ultimately the sacred law must be obeyed. If I decide, despite all good advice from both spirit world and my family, to take up a hobby that includes jumping off, tall buildings without parachutes, I'm going to seriously increase the likelihood of me ending my experience much earlier. And you could argue that actually, if I did end that experience earlier, that in itself would have been destiny. But I've had conflicting advice, folks, from spirits, which suggests that destiny, the start and finish date, and the things that are meant to happen in between, is at play, but my free will can interfere with that, and the free will of others. So even if I don't take up the hobby of jumping off tall buildings, but someone else decides to drink and drive at the moment I'm crossing a road and runs me over, you could argue that that wasn't destiny. My experience has been ended prematurely. Another argument would be, actually, my destiny was always to assume there was a start and a finish date with all these different products, but there would be this opportunity here where someone that makes a decision to drink and drive, that was part of their destiny. It was part of their experience. And this is where it just becomes too confusing for my really, really simple brain. So I break it down by assuming then Project Ashley, the new human who has chose his family and chose his life, has got all of the raw ingredients to make the cheesecake, which is going to be Ashley Robinson. This beautiful biscuit base, this start and finish date, and all these wonderful ingredients are going to go into it to make this fantastic cheesecake. Me living my life, living my experience, going along that, assuming that almost everything was meant to be. I'm take personal responsibility, and that actually when my life finishes, that was because it was meant to be. And perhaps when things happen which are really bad or really unfortunate, the human being in me just struggles to really believe that, because bad things do happen, awful things happen, evil things happen. And as Ashley Robinson, I find it hard to believe that anything or anyone would want or would allow those things to happen. But then that goes back to a very sort of rude concept from a sort of mixed experience around early Christianity, and God perhaps being referred to as a supreme being, an individual in charge of all these things, which is certainly not what I understand it to be now, and that God on this throne would be allowing these things. I don't believe that. I actually think that God is a descriptive word for all the collective energy and all the particles of energy that are in the universe. God is the divine everything, the great spirit. So was it me in Blockbuster Video choosing the difficult stuff? Was who Claire Robinson is now and Ashley Robinson in Blockbuster saying, we're going to have children, but we're going to have those struggles. For 10 years, we're going to really struggle to get pregnant when lots of people around us do get pregnant. When other people who didn't want children get pregnant, when victims of rape get pregnant despite them not wanting to be in those situations. Was all of that meant to be? Was all of that in the synopsis and the blurb at the back of the DVD live story? People like Ralph Steadman would say yes. Everything that happens follows a great and divine law, and therefore everything was meant to be as it is to be. But the information that I get from my guides is that it's just not that simple. And it's difficult for me to understand with my human brain and my experiences of what has got me this far. And therefore, perhaps it is the human in me that likes this idea of not everything is pre-written or destinated, and that actually this element of chaos and chaos theory, that's what free will and personal responsibility is. And that's what throws a spanner in the works. And I want to introduce a little bit of evidence from the spirit world that I've had around so-called natural disasters. Because you would argue that if everything was predestined, then every natural disaster could be predicted because it was part of an infinite pattern. You could argue that the reason we can't predict every single thing is because we're not meant to predict it, because it's meant to happen, because it's part of destiny. But you also get evidence from the spirit world who say, when that earthquake happened that caused that tsunami and so many people suddenly entered the spirit world, we actually weren't expecting that. We were maybe a couple of steps before you because we were in an elevated position, being in heaven and seeing the big picture. But suddenly, when hundreds of people entered the spirit world because of that thing happening, we didn't know it was going to happen, and it wasn't meant to happen, but it did as a result of X, Y, and Z happening on planet Earth. And that's what planet Earth and elementals and everything else coming together made it so. And the reason I mentioned the tsunami, it was one of those big Boxing Day events, and the Sri Lanka tsunami in particular I'm thinking about, that had a big impact to me. And I asked lots of questions about this in the spirit world, and I asked lots of different mediums in trance and control states. And almost all of the evidence I got back from the spirit world was that spirit were obviously doing everything they could to help people that had just crossed over and those who were injured and those who were lost. But that actually people in the spirit world, some of those beings, didn't know it was going to happen. This is, of course, where some people might say, you see, although there is only one afterlife, there are many dimensions, there are many levels within the afterlife. And therefore, people that have just crossed into that afterlife have gone from the 3D experience of planet Earth to more of a limbo period in the fourth dimension as we approach the fifth dimension. And therefore, they weren't in the need to know. And it always reminds me of some sort of science fiction or army novel, about classified information and not meant to know. And then, of course, the human being in me puts a big question mark over that and go, well, why? Why would you be in the spirit world and not have access to certain information? Why do you have to be an ascended master that has been promoted to several levels to get to a certain point? So, folks, really interested to get your thoughts on this. The way I have it today is that, yes, we can choose where to incarnate, how to incarnate. I think that not only do we do this certainly at least once, we do it multiple times, hundreds, if not thousands of times. And we do it with groups of souls that we enjoy the experience with. We sign contracts with friends and family and loved ones, and we get to play different roles in this play, which is life and which is experience. And it's all in pursuit of happiness. It's all in pursuit of unconditional love, doing things we love with people we love in a different way. We've done it once as a guy, we come back, we do it as a woman. We've done it once as a mum, we come back as a son. We did it as a son, we come back as a daughter. And then we look into more experiences. We did it at a time that we had all our arms and legs. We do it with one leg because we wanted to understand what that meant. So all of this, I think, has a play. And going back to beautiful Oscar, who was born quite recently, I believe that at some point we all met in that design factory in what I call heaven. We chose these lives. We thought about all the different dominoes that had to fall down in order for the events to happen as they have happened. And I do believe that every baby is meant to be. Sometimes the human being is just unable to continue to physically reproduce that shell, that vessel to store the soul and to continue with that experience. And therefore that personality goes back to heaven, and they do have the opportunity to incarnate again. They also have the opportunity to stay in heaven and wait until all the souls are reunited again, perhaps at heaven's gate. So that's my sort of working theory, folks. That's some of the evidence as I've had presented from different mediums as well as different philosophers. Now, Tess says, I was told by my mum that I was not meant to come along. I think my dad slipped on his elbows. I was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, and my sister covered my face with my blanket. Interesting stories about when we are children. Tess says, I also feel I was meant to be here, even though it's not been easy at times. Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people that have a belief in reincarnation and multiple incarnations and karma talk about the fact that everything that has happened was meant to have happened. It was all part of the experiences were meant to happen. One of the lovely ladies that talks a lot about astrology and tarot cards is the lovely Kate May. We interviewed her on this show a little while ago, and I asked her a question about destiny. And you'll have to go back and find the show to get the verbatim words, folks. But when I asked her about it, she sort of said that, you know, taking my language with Project Ashley Robinson's start and finish date, regardless of what I do in the middle, regardless of my free will and my personal responsibility, which lead to decisions and of obvious dominoes and cause and effect, all of the big stuff which is meant to happen in my life will happen. The universe will find a way. And I quite liked that sort of understanding of it. It takes something big to really interfere with the destiny, and it isn't always easy. And often those experiences that we're going through, particularly the really difficult and challenging ones, for me, it's much easier for me to assume that that wasn't meant to be, that wasn't predestined. But perhaps folks will all be reunited in that wonderful place called heaven. And we'll have a talk about this again, assuming they have broadband and Richard can beam them across. And we'll be able to answer a bit more. But I think we know as much or as little as we're meant to know. And we should probably still keep asking questions. We can still keep challenging the status quo as we seek for the truth. But I just want to sort of finish on those points before taking a few more questions around children. And we know that so many children are born almost naturally very psychic and attuned and aware. And I believe, and I've been told this from Spirit, that it's because they've just come from the spirit world that they are almost accustomed to that energy, tuned in to that frequency. It's a familiar experience for them. And although their physical body is unable to recall the obvious memory of the experience before they started as a human being in this life and this experience, it's there like breadcrumbs, which is why they remember it. But children are fantastic and they're fascinating, and they have so many wonderful insights into this. And if you're lucky enough to be around children that aren't driving you crazy, and you get to have these conversations, just like I did with my son Ethan tonight in the fish and chip shop a couple of hours ago. And we were talking about Nanny Hazel, my dad's mum, who died when Ethan was about 2.5 or 3 years old. And he was talking about missing her. And we spoke about whether or not he'd known Granddad Dell in heaven, because my grandfather passed to the spirit world just before Ethan was born. And he says, I don't know. I don't think you can go to heaven till the end of your life. And then I read him Heaven's Gate poem. And he looked at me and he said, oh, it was a really short poem, but it was really nice. And I like that. And maybe heaven isn't just where we finished. Maybe heaven is where I started. And, you know, for a 7-year-old, it really got his sort of mind boggling. And he said, yeah, I think I was there. And maybe I did meet Oscar. Obviously, that's just conversation between father and son. You can take any meaning in that whatsoever. But, folks, I've laid out my belief. Project Newman, Ashley Robinson, starts on the 29th of the 9th, 1982, and will go on until X, Y, and Z. He will achieve A, B, C, D, E, F, and G with X, Y, and Z. And all those experiences will be important. Thank you, folks. Alison says, old souls. It is known that some children know about their previous lives. Yes, absolutely, Alison. So many things recently about that, and children talking about previous lives and previous experiences. And someone will have to remind me again about rainbow children. Someone mentioned that right at the beginning of the show, didn't they? Michelle says, do you think some spirits can choose not to come back at all because life is hard and I don't think I'd want to do it all again? Michelle, absolutely. Although I think reincarnation is possible, I don't think everybody reincarnates. I think there is an element of choice. I think a lot of it is personal choice as a being. Let's call them a spirit being as opposed to the human being, because the human being is an experience. It's an experience on planet Earth in the 3D. Equally, I don't think it happens automatically. I know that some religions, some aspects of Hinduism talk about the cycle of life and it happened instantly. Buddha and the Chinese sort of traditions around the emperor. This idea that as one personality dies, it's incarnated immediately within those sort of seconds. Perhaps that is also possible. As a spiritualist medium, most of the evidence I have is that spirit, once you go back to spirit, you wait there to reunite with friends and family, and you want to check in on them. It's a place of pure thought and a place of pure energy. And actually, I think that's because of these soul groups. Equally, I know that some people finish their life, they go to spirit world and they don't communicate and they don't incarnate and they just go off and learn, and they go to the halls of learning, and perhaps they do some research in the Acacia records and things like that. Michelle says, so when our loved ones are in spirit and they reincarnate, does that spirit stay in the spirit world and a new one is born, so they're not the same soul? All really good question, Michelle. And I know that Julie Caswell and there'll be a few others have got some different opinions on this. Let's take this glass, okay? This glass of Diet Coke. The mug, the jug, the pint jug is a vessel, like the human body. Inside is the soul, the Diet Coke. And throughout the experience on Earth, like I just took a sip there, the Diet Coke, sorry, I got a dry throat, folks. The Diet Coke starts to go down. That's almost like my life force. And at the end of experience, personality has left that glass to go to the Great Spirit, to go to heaven. So you've got to imagine now a pint of liquid being poured into a bowl with all the other liquids. But there is still this element of the Ashley Robinson existence being part of something bigger, this big, great spirit and divine. The personality that is Ashley Robinson, that would be who communicates via a medium, talks about that. That's that element of energy. I believe that the energy that creates that being, Ashley Robinson, has the opportunity to reincarnate. Now, that's from my own personal experience of past life regression and doing some research into possible past life experiences with me. And my limited knowledge and understanding of this is that Ashley Robinson is Project Newman, what I'm doing right now. But in previous lives, under previous identities, it was the groups of atoms and energy that creates my soul and personality today that did have those previous lives. However, what we know about atoms and energy is that particles, which are tiny bits of energy within a single atom, which is so small we can't even see it with the naked human eye, atoms and particles can exist in more than one place at the same time. We know that atoms and particles can be in constant communication with each other. So it does suggest that part of this liquid joining the Great Spirit, heaven, as Ashley Robinson, the identity of Ashley Robinson, then there is other bits of that liquid, part of the Great Spirit, that could go and incarnate again. And of course, if we're all part of the Great Spirit, and it is the Great Spirit going and doing all of these different experiences and different experiments, planet Earth, the training planet, and all these different bits of language that people would say, it suggests that the personality of Ashley Robinson is able to stay in heaven under the identity and personality of Ashley Robinson, while part of that being is able to incarnate as someone else. I believe that for lots of reincarnation that I've personally gone through, then the personality of Ashley Robinson is almost like an identity, like another page in my passport. The passport cover probably has another name or an identity of some sort. Ashley Robinson is a page within that passport, and each of the lives and experiences becomes another page in that passport with various stamps and experience in it, but it's all part of the same book, and it is therefore the book itself which is reincarnating, and I'm adding a different page. And perhaps those pages stay in the Acacia records, and it's only an element of that experience that goes down on this umbilical cord to places like planet Earth, the training planet, leads that experience. Project Robinson, A to B, has all of those experiences, come back, goes back into the scrapbook of life, part of that being's existence. So hopefully I've answered that question for you. And you say, oh, yes, of course, I forgot we're all energy. It's fascinating. Yeah, that's that's my limited understanding of it. I do wish I'd paid far more attention at school when we talked about atoms and energy and everything else now. But I think everyone is at least of that belief that we know that everything's made of atoms. And atoms is the Latin word for atom, which sort of in layman's terms means that was as short as we could get it. We had a piece of rope, we kept cutting it down in half and half and half and half until we got to the smallest piece of rope and string we thought it could be. It was the atom, the smallest bit. And then other scientists come along and said, we can split it again. We can split the atom, perhaps with catastrophic consequences, but we can split the atom. And inside that, more energy, particles, neutrons, and everything else rotating around it. So, yeah, all energy, Michelle, absolutely. And it's all part of that great spirit. What we're going to do now, folks, we're just going to pause and do a couple of adverts. Do get your questions ready, folks, for the last sort of 10-15 minutes of the show. So we're now going to roll with some adverts.
Join us this Saturday for a special broadcast of our popular show Sensing Spirit. We are live on location with Polly Harnett, Sam O'Neill and Bill Hughes. The live and interactive show starts from 9:30 p.m. Join us this Sunday from 11 a.m. with our divine service broadcasted live from Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. Each week we have a guest medium who demonstrates their mediumship abilities to those in the church and viewers online. The service consists of a prayer, healing, spiritual reading, and a demonstration of mediumship.
And look at this, folks, a SPTV mind, body and holistic fair. Evening demonstration of mediumship later that night. Women in Spiritualist Church are going to be there. We're going to have a little church stall. I'm going to be doing some spiritual counselling. I'm currently being trained by the lovely Reverend Leslie Morton as one of her new spiritual counsellors, which is all part of a pathway for me to become an ordained spiritualist minister. It's one of the modules that I'm currently going through. So there'll be lots of different people there: spiritualists, psychics, clairvoyants, tarot card readers, mediums. It's going to be a really good day, folks. Head over to sptv.uk to find out more information about it. Full address is down there: mbs.spiritualpsychictv.online. Okay, well, now I invite you to give us more of your wonderful questions, folks. And what is it that I've said that you agree with? Hopefully you agree with some of it. What is it you're thinking about for the first time? What is it you disagree with? Challenge me. Be gentle, but challenge me. Alison Mason says, do you believe there is hell or 7 steps to heaven to go through certain levels depending on how a person behaves in their lives, i.e. murderers, kidnappers and robbers? Good question, Alison. I've mentioned heaven a lot. It's a word that I really like. It's a word I feel comfortable with. I also talk about heaven as a spirit world. And we often think about heaven, folks, don't we, as being above. And I think that's because of about a raised vibration, about a faster, higher frequency, because heaven is a place of pure thought. Heaven is a place of pure energy, and we're vibrating at a very high level. If I believe in that, then you have to suggest that a slower vibrating level, earthly life, human being experience, is there something even slower than that, lower? And we often think about hell traditionally as being below us or beneath us. And I wonder if that's because of it being a realm of slower vibration, slower energy and frequency. What I do know, folks, is there is life after the change we go through called death. And there is this afterlife. And I think that as part of you going through this afterlife to that place called heaven, heaven is everything you need it to be. It's also everything you want it to be. So if you think you're the only people that get through to heaven, then there's probably a little wall around you with soundproofing so you don't realise there's other people up there. If you want that little cottage by the sea, then that is also heaven. If you get to the end of your life and you are in a position to judge yourself, and I do think that everyone has the opportunity to judge themselves. You might see the life you lived as a murderer, rapist, paedophile, kidnapper, etc., and create a prison of your own making, being very ashamed of the life you lived. Perhaps it wasn't what you checked out of Blockbuster. It was not the experience you were meant to go through. Perhaps there were psychological, chemical imbalances in your brain that created you to be a psychopath or something like that. And you're very disappointed about that and you want to understand more about it. Perhaps it was your destiny. Perhaps you had been murdered and you decided to come back as a murderer. It's possible, I guess. Perhaps you go in as a murderer first of all, only to then come back to be murdered, and you want to experience that. Perhaps you want to be someone who's going to change law to prosecute more murderers, and therefore you want to go through the experience of being a murderer to see how they can be caught. You're going to be the next great detective or investigator. There are lots of different reasons which might suggest why there would be various lives and experiences. I don't think that means you automatically get descended to hell. I think that life after the life you've just lived, in the afterlife, is a place where bad people and negative energy is unable to progress. Only positive energy is able to progress. So if you think about Earth and our earthly experience as a human being in the third dimension or the 3D, and the next point of existence being in that sort of 4D, some people talk about the fourth dimension being like a limbo and a portal, it being the place when you talk about All Hallows Eve on the 31st of October and Halloween, where the realms come close together. It's where the 3D and 5D world can speak and communicate, and the spirits can flow evenly before that 4D world. Some people in different circles of spiritualism therefore talk about that fifth dimension as actually being heaven, of being the sort of pure spirit world. You are unable to go from the 4D, which is after your 3D earthly experience, because you're not pure. You've got that karmatic debt. And the more negative karma, the more debt you have, the more you have to work off. And therefore you go back and you do it again, or you incarnate and you do it again. Some people suggest there are multiple dimensions that you can continue to progress. So you finish this life after this life, you progress to the heaven, the spirit world, you progress again, progress again. And that actually, although I don't think it's like an exclusive block of council flats where you have to get to the penthouse, I do think there are opportunities to better yourself. There are opportunities for learning and development and investment. There are halls of learning, great universities and academia where you can go off and learn things and experience things as a spirit being that you couldn't as a human being, and vice versa, where you can take your human experience and you can work with other people, because lots of the skills and the empathy and the strengths you have as a human being are of use in the spirit world. Great doctors and nurses in this earthly experience, we know, work as doctors and nurses in the spirit world, and they guide doctors and nurses and healers from heaven to the earthly experience. But I want to finish that question, Alison, by just quoting, well, not quoting, but thinking about the film Ghost. Whoopi Goldberg and a few other amazing actors and actresses. And you remember that the bad, negative people, the baddies in the film, when they die, rather than ascend to that place called heaven and have the opportunity to work with people like Whoopi Goldberg as the medium, they're almost picked up by like the black sort of spooky characters. And I do believe there are custodians and guardians that look after that hell and that would group up that. So yeah, murderers, rapists, paedophiles, real bad, negative, evil people, there's no way they're knocking about in heaven and it's all forgiven. They pass to their afterlife, they pass to the spirit world, and if they don't create a prison of their own making, then I do believe there's an element of them being segregated and kept apart, debriefed, spoken to, and when the time is right, the opportunity to improve themselves, to give service to others, perhaps an opportunity to incarnate, to go and work off that karmatic debt, an opportunity to do that in the body. Alison says, thank you for explaining. Very brilliant, very interesting. Alison, you're very welcome. What about you folks? I'm getting some nice controversial questions now that make me sort of give an opinion on stuff. Everything I tell you folks is the truth as I've had it explained to me about how I understand it. I believe it's the truth, which is why I pass it on. But apart from evidence, I have no other evidence. So always open to be challenged. Natalie says, what are we learning and growing for? Why do we need to experience all these things? So, Natalie, I believe that as a human being, there's certain things that we can experience that we're just unable to experience in any other type of existence. Now, I don't have enough knowledge to talk about life on other planets, but if we talk about planet Earth and experiencing the things we do in the spirit world that we can't do. So there are no physical bodies. And by physical bodies, I mean in the same way we're interacting now in 3D, I can touch this desk in front of me. Spirit world is a place of pure thought. So anything we want it to be, we can believe it like we close our eyes and we imagine. But, kissing, okay? So kissing is generally quite a nice thing to do, either with a loved one or kissing your kids goodnight and stuff like that. Hugging, cuddling, all those types of physical spirits around love. In the spirit world, you have no physical body. Now, you might remember what it was like to be kissed or to kiss, and therefore, if you want that feeling, you can try and remember it, but it's more of a memory. So there are lots of different things for us to experience on Earth while we're doing that. We don't have all the knowledge of previous lives and of how everything works. We are reliant on people. Think about my little Oscar that's just been born 6-7 days ago. He is totally reliant on everyone around him for food, for warmth, for shelter, for clothing. And actually, there are things we can't experience in the spirit world because spirit world is a place of pure thought. If we're hungry, we think that we're no longer hungry and the feeling is gone. We have no physical stomach. So the sensation of food, of eating, of feeling all of the elements, the rain, the wind, the snow, all of those things are things for us to experience. And of course, there's so many different varieties from the way that we are spoken to and the way we are spoke. So just imagine then, you think, well, I'm going to go down to Earth and I'm going to do it once. And you go in there and you think, right, I'm going to be a bloke. I'm going to be called Ashley Robinson. I'm going to be overweight, but very charming. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to play rugby. I'm going to do a show called Being Spiritual. I'm going to meet the lovely Richard James. And you pick all this sort of life and you do it. And you do it and you live it. And you think, well, that was pretty good. And I loved being in love. And I loved having children. I love that feeling of picking a pop pass rugby ball, sticking it under my shoulder, dropping my shoulder, knocking someone out of the way. You think, I'm going to do it again. It was so much fun. I'm going to do it again. But then you think, you know what? I'm going to do it this time as a woman. So you do it all again as a woman. And then you do that again. You think, oh, that was great, but Europe was lovely. I'd like to now do it in Africa or in the Antarctic. I'm going to do it again as a man, but this time in Africa. Do you know what? I did it as a middle-class family with moderate wealth. I now want to do it as a really rich person. And then you do it as a rich person. You think, look at all those people I exploited. I'm now going to go back and do it as a poor person. And then you come across things you didn't even know were possible. How did that person cope after that terrible accident? How did that person cope with that? How did they do that? And then you come back and you do that again. And then you think, well, what about all those people that dedicate their entire life to service, that worked in soup kitchens all their life and gave everything they have? Now I want to do it like that. So Natalie, I think there are these opportunities. Nurse Taylor says very cuddly. Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Natalie, so I hope that answers your question. That's my belief. Things we can't experience in any other way than doing it as a human being, and for personal growth. Julie says, my great nephew has told us his new granddad Tom, who was in heaven. We were told that a little bit of granddad Tom was coming back. I believe this is my nephew, but granddad Tom, my dad, is still in spirit. Really nice, Julie. And I know that you and I have had lots of conversations about the concept of energy being able to be in more than one place at one time. Other people, Malcolm Robinson, who's a great investigator, paranormal investigator, great lecturer, spoke about multiple dimensions, folks, and the fact that perhaps part of our energy can be in multiple dimensions. And there's lots of great sci-fi shows, Sliders being one I've mentioned before, that for every time we make a decision, there's a new possible realm. The universe is infinitely expanding. So perhaps our energy can be in all those different places. Perhaps it can also be in different times, because earthly time is a concept that we go through as a human being. In the spirit world, time is not as relevant. There are places like Doctor Who that throw in the spanner and works around time. Kelly says, hi, I absolutely know spirits are around me. how then can I train, or I don't know, to be able to see or visualize, communicate, and begin to have confidence in what I am in film? Are there courses for like opening the door or lifting the veil, if that makes sense? Yes, it does. Absolutely, Kelly. Welcome to the club. You're in the right place, and they're surrounded online by loads of good people. Mary Dixie was, in fact, my circle leader. And a circle leader is ultimately someone you need to find. So head over to SPTV UK, look up the spiritual directory, chuck in your postcode, and find who are your local spiritualist churches, your spiritualist centres. And you can also check out the SPTV Academy, and you can train online. It's always great, particularly now the world has opened up a little bit, to do a little bit of face-to-face and support your local spiritualist church or centre. Go for something that's accredited. Go for a recommendation if you can. Chat to people on the SPTV fan page on Facebook if you're looking for recommendations. But yeah, you want to find yourself a good circle leader. Some churches and centres have open circles where you simply just turn up for the night and you start there. Others are more closed circles that run either frequently or have a fixed period. For example, some sort of foundation level open or closed circle, 6-8 weeks, is exactly what would be ideal for you. There are lots of things you can read about. There's a brilliant meditation every other, I think it's Friday, isn't it, Richard? Leslie does, and lots of other guided meditations where you can learn about meeting your guides. Watch a couple of my shows back on playback. There's a lovely meditation there with some beautiful videography, which Richard had put together. Takes you on a little guided meditation to meet your guides, to go to a meeting circle, to learn how to sort of open and close. But really, you want to start practicing this as soon as you can, Kelly. And you want to do it with like-minded people that are a little bit more experienced so they can help you. So find a good church, centre, circle leader, find a good tutor. And there are also some wonderful VIP nights. So SPTV run a very important patron. You can become a patron of SPTV. There are lots of Zooms. And there are also some online development classes. Marcus Lupser, one of the people I know for sure that does that. I think the married couple who's now forgotten, Kirsty and Matt Grogan, run some online training as well. And there are also opportunities to then practice sort of giving readings and doing mediumship once you're up to that standard. So lovely, Kelly. Good luck and best wishes with your journey, my friend. And head over to SPTV UK, find that directory. And remember to vote. Okay, let's take another question. Stephanie Forster. I think my oldest son is an old soul. He's very mature and caring for his age and just seems to have a lot of understanding. It's as though he has healing hands as well. If I headache, his touch is very soothing. And if I have a stressful day, his cuddle after school seems to melt my stress. Oh, what a wonderful fella. It sounds great, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, old souls, I do believe in that. You say when your uncle passed, he spoke of your dad, his dad, and even my dog coming to see him in the last week. It felt like they were around him, waiting to take him. Absolutely. And I think that although some of us might only do one experience as a human being, some of us do tens of thousands. Now, right at the beginning of the show, someone mentioned rainbow children. There we go. I don't know if that was pure luck, Richard, or you and I on collective consciousness, but Richard just brought up the comment to remind me. It was Shamila that said that. Rainbow children. Now, you can do a lot of research on this, folks, but in a nutshell, my understanding of rainbow children is old souls. And there is this idea that we're in the age of Aquarius and we're in this sort of age of spiritual awakening and development. And in fact, there are lots of really old souls coming back, all to incarnate around the same sort of time, so that we don't have so many first experience souls, not so many people doing their first incarnation, but a much bigger group of old souls all incarnating at the same time. And it suggests that some of these people will be naturally gifted or been able to work with the abilities and some of those spiritual gifts like mediumship and healing, and that ultimately they're going to find it easier and quicker to assimilate the knowledge, because nothing is truly new. I think that when we learn something, we feel, oh, that's fantastic. Actually, we're probably remembering it again. We'd forgotten about it, perhaps in a previous experience or previous incarnation. So, yeah, rainbow children, special children. The idea being that perhaps there are old souls that have all come together to incarnate, and they're here to help us, here to help us knowledge. And in terms of evolution and progression, one argument could be that people that find faith, particularly within groups like spiritualism, are in themselves older souls with open minds. And remember, of course, folks, your mind works much better if you treat it like a parachute. Keep it open and it will do the job. So open mind, open parachute. Take one step at a time. Keep learning, keep asking questions. And within spiritualism, we're taught that our religion is very much a science and a culture. We ask for evidence of our faith. We prove there is life after death through things like mediumship, and we use those gifts of healing. And actually, that there's an argument that people like spiritualists and others are quick to that mark and have that opportunity. Thank you. We're coming to the last few minutes of the folks now. Last few minutes of the show, folks. Wendy says, I also believe each life is a page in our book. We learn different things each time, and it all goes towards our bigger story. Yeah, absolutely. A bit like my passport, Wendy. I was talking about that that sort of scrapbook, and opportunities for us to do different things. And I mentioned once before Disneyland. I've been to Disneyland in Paris. You enjoy it so much, you come back again, don't you? You think that was great. I'm just going to do it again. It was so much fun. Maybe you go back straight to the rides or the experiences you enjoyed, and you avoid the things that that was okay. It was meh. I could live without that, and you do something a little bit different. And I think that the opportunity to reincarnate is exactly that. So just as the last couple of questions come in, folks, we're going to talk about children in spirit. Because we have no physical body and the concept of time is irrelevant, I do think that people have the choice. As a spirit being, they can decide to progress and grow up at the same rate they would have done in Earth. They can stay around the same age they would have been, of course, backed up by the infinite intelligence of the energy of the being that they were. Ms. Taylor says, what do you make of the school of thinking that says that you only reincarnate 7 times? I think that if you believe you can only reincarnate 7 times, then you might limit yourself to 7. I also think that this idea of 7 experiences has been shown by other people that have been regressed, that perhaps you can do a lot more than 7. So, I have no evidence either way. I myself have done some past life regression. Kirsty Grogan, who we mentioned before, has done some of that as well. Certainly people have gone back and given more evidence of more than 7 lives. Ralph Steadman, who I used to regard as a great expert on this subject, spoke about tens of thousands of possibilities of working lives. If you take just the history of this planet alone and how many times you could have experienced life as a human being, then there are tens of thousands of opportunities to have done that. It doesn't suggest, of course, that we have a limited amount of souls to create human beings. And of course, the universe is continually expanding and infinitely getting bigger. So the idea being, perhaps you can do this on other planets too, other times. But I think that you can do it more than 7 times. It's my personal belief. Julie Caswell says a lot of people call a rainbow child the baby born after a miscarriage. Yeah, I've also heard that, folks, and there's some charities that talk about that in particular. Julie says, I've lost 6 babies, never known the gender. The last one was my daughter's twin, would now be 16. Julie, I'm sorry to have heard them. Thank you for trusting us to share us with that information. And hopefully what we've said tonight, there's been some information there. But I think every child that is born is meant to be. And those that try, give it their utmost, and it just wasn't possible. The physical biology just wasn't in their favor. But at that point of conception, there is the start of a physical personality, which would have blended to that soul. And there is a life after that life at that point of conception. Thank you, Elaine, for the thumbs up. And I think it was Stephanie saying that she's had a good show tonight. Stephanie Forster, brilliant. I'm glad that you found the show has been brilliant. It's been lovely to be here with you folks, engaging with you. I've loved your questions. I find them quite challenging. It makes me and my guide team work hard. And my guides and I give you the information that we have come to believe is the truth. But my own guide team constantly disagree with each other. You've got to imagine this boardroom of chaos that they sit around the table. I've got my good friend Ralph currently chairing them, and they're all giving their own opinions, their own experience, and their own evidence. And ultimately, we get to a point of sharing what we can all agree on. And they've all entered spirit world from their last experience as a human being at different times. Certainly within my own guide team that influenced this philosophy, you've got about 5,000 years of sort of different opportunities of leaving Earth. Tina says, very interesting show. Thank you, Tina. And thank you for the other comments there. Thank you for your love and laughter, folks. I'm glad that we've all been able to work in an uplifting way today. Leslie Morton, great show. See you tomorrow night. See you tomorrow night indeed, Leslie. You have to remind me why I'm seeing you tomorrow night, Leslie, because I'm running out of caffeine now and I've forgotten. Julie Caswell, great show. Thank you, Julie. Lovely. Jim, another good show. Very interesting. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for what you do at Wimbledon. Lovely. Terry Louise, absolute diamond. All these wonderful admins and ambassadors of SPTV. Alison Mason, thank you. Very grateful for your live tonight. Very interesting, enlightening. Really enjoyed it. Blessings to you. Blessings to you, to Alison. Good night and God bless to you all. Thank you, Mary Dixie. Thank you, Richard James, our producer, for giving us the opportunity to do this. Folks, good night and God bless.